Delight Your Marriage, episode 46.
Welcome to the Delight Your Marriage podcast, the show where you hear from amazing and inspiring wives sharing their struggles, triumphs, and advice for this journey called marriage. Here's your host, Belah Rose.
Hello and welcome. This is Belah Rose, and you are listening to the Delight Your Marriage podcast, where I interview a wife or intimacy expert on what it takes to have a thriving, wonderful marriage. Now, today you get both. A lot of these overlap. They're an expert and they're a wife, but Sheila Gregoire is going to give us some amazing insights specifically about what a woman needs and what a man needs in this thing called marriage. And she shares really some good tips, not only about getting out of maybe a rut that you're in, but also understanding how we can have sex with our whole being, not just the physical. So it's really good stuff. Now, before we dive in, I want to mention, if you have not yet listened to the webinar I did recently, it's called How to Make Him Wild for You, the 5 Secrets to Receive Love and Passion in God's Plan. I want to make sure you get it. So would you go to delightyourmarriage.com/webinar, and I will send it to you as soon as possible, and listen into this wonderful interview with Sheila. Okay, well, welcome back, Delight Your Marriage listener. This is Belah Rose, and I'm really excited to have Sheila Gregoire. And Sheila, I forgot to ask you before we started, I've always pronounced your name Gregoire. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's actually really good. Most people get it totally wrong, but that's very good.
Okay, very cool. Well, that makes me happy. Okay, well, welcome, Sheila. I'm so excited that you're here. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and I'm so excited to share with your audience, too.
Oh, good. Well, could you go ahead and introduce yourself, a little bit about your family and your day-to-day life for anyone who doesn't know you already?
Sure. Well, I have been married for 23 years to my husband, Keith, and we've been happily married for about 18. So the first 5 were a little bit rough. We've raised 2 daughters, one of whom is getting married in 3 weeks. So I'm a little bit under the gun, and I'm having nightmares of all the things I'm forgetting to do.
Oh, my gosh.
But that's exciting. And we'll be empty nesters next year, so we're getting used to that idea as well. But I've been writing and blogging for about 16 years, and my 9th book is coming out in August, 9 Thoughts That Will Change Your Marriage. But I think what I'm most known for is writing about marriage and sex, because that's the fun part. So
it is. It's the fun part. It's the stuff that we don't talk about but need to be. And I definitely consider you a pioneer in this space, and I'm so grateful that you're with us. So really cool. How old is your daughter, did you say?
My daughter who's getting married, she's only 20. Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, a little young, but they're really good together, and they're both going to be in school forever, so there's no point waiting till school's done. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, with you being her mother, I'm sure she's gotten plenty of tips and advice, and oh, that's really cool. Okay, cool. Well, could you share a little bit about you and your husband's personalities?
Well, that's funny you should ask, because I did a post on that this morning. If you do Myers Briggs, anyone who knows the Myers Briggs, I'm an ENTJ, which means that I'm an extrovert. I'm a creative thinker. I'm very black and white. I make decisions quickly. Hitler was an ENTJ.
Oh, no.
But so was
really
Winston Churchill, so that's okay. Very much the decision makers, the leaders. My husband is more of a traditionalist. He's more the administrator, the loyal, get stuff done person. And so usually when we clash, it's because I've got a million ideas of a million different things that I want to do. And he's thinking, if it isn't broken, why try to fix it? So...
Yes. That's really funny that you say that. I actually am a huge fan of the Myers Briggs, or any personality test, honestly. Right? Do you just love all personality tests?
I do. And, my daughter, the one who's getting married, is also an ENTJ. My husband's an ESTJ. And then our youngest is an ESFP. So she's your little people pleaser.
Oh, my gosh.
And she just is so funny because she's so opposite from the rest of us. But yeah, a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. Well, anyone who hasn't heard of the Myers Briggs or specifically about this, there's a great website called 16 Personalities, the number 16personalities.com. I'll have it linked up on the show notes so people can find out what they are. But I just looked you up. Yes, you are the commander, bold, imaginative, and strong-willed leaders.
Yes.
So, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm close to you. I'm an ENFJ, which charismatic and inspiring leaders able to mesmerize their listeners. So there you go.
Yes. Those who start cults are most likely to be ENFJs.
Oh, scary, right? You know a lot about this. That's awesome.
Yeah, my mom did this for a living. She's an ENFJ too, so yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Way. Oh, very cool. Okay, well, we could go back and forth on this all day. That's awesome. But tell me, if you would, this Delight Your Marriage is all about inspiring and empowering marriages to have really great intimacy. So could you share a scripture or a quote that's meant a lot to you over the years for your marriage?
Well, one thing that I always tell people that they need to understand is that men make love in order to feel loved, whereas women need to feel loved in order to make love.
Ugh, that is so, so good. Well, and it's something we're going to unpack shortly, I'm sure, quite a bit more. But yeah, I love that. I think so often as women, we feel the opposite. We feel like I need to feel loved. I need to feel cherished in order for it to even happen. And the guy's like, well, I don't feel loved until we do.
Yeah. So it sounds like a recipe for disaster, doesn't it? But
right.
It actually does work. It can work.
Yeah, well, I hope that you'll be talking about that in your story. So, could you mentioned in the very beginning you've been married 23 years, but happily married. What did you say? 18.
18.
Okay, so tell us, could you share that difficult season or struggle in your marriage?
Well, we had a whole lot of issues when we first got married. And one of them was I came into marriage with so much baggage. My parents split when I was very young. I had a lot of rejection issues with my dad and with my stepfather later on, and with a lot of bad relationships as a teenager. And then when we were engaged, my husband actually broke off the engagement. And we got back together a few months later, but that really threw me too. So when we did get married, trust was just a huge issue for me. And I didn't know it was going to be. It wasn't like I got married knowing that I was going to put up all these walls. Usually we don't know how we're going to react. Right. But when I did get married, I did put up a lot of walls. And that made, it made sex difficult. It made communication difficult. And so we spent the first few years of our marriage hurting each other and feeling hurt without understanding how the other person was feeling. It seemed like every time he wanted to make love, I experienced that as rejection because it meant he only wanted me for what I could do for him.
Wow.
And yet every time I didn't, he experienced that as rejection. And so we both felt like the other person didn't love us, even though we both really did love each other. So we just weren't connecting at all. And it took a couple of years to get over that and to realize that there wasn't any point in wallowing about it and in feeling, why doesn't he really love me? Why doesn't he meet my needs? Eventually, you need to take the first step and start doing what is in your power to make the marriage better. And we both kind of came to that at the same time. And ironically, having kids helped us a lot. For a lot of people, it takes them apart. For us, I think it brought us together because it gave us something else to concentrate on and focus on. And, and even though we were exhausted in those years, we did have a lot of fun. So I think that brought us together too. Mm-hmm.
Can I ask, just to kind of pull out some of the things you talked about already, you said specifically you were hurting. You felt rejected when he would make advances for sex.
I know, and to most men that will make no sense. But women probably understand what I mean.
Yes. Could you unpack that a little bit more? Why do you think men wouldn't understand that?
Because to a guy, if I want her, it means that I love her. So obviously, if I wouldn't want her if I didn't love her. So to him, that's his way of showing love. Whereas to me, it felt like your love comes with strings attached. You're
Mm.
only going to love me if I perform for you or something. And so it just got into this really cycle where we would just go downhill and spiral downhill without really understanding how the other person was feeling.
Yeah, that is really so true. And it's true, especially if a woman is coming into marriage with baggage maybe from, honestly, just society as a whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just so much abuse of women all over the place. So even if your wife hasn't specifically had, abuse in her past, she easily could have internalized. I mean, don't you think that's like a easy thing for a wife to kind of have in her thoughts as like, he just wants me for sex?
Yeah, and I think that our culture objectifies women so much. We see it in the pornography industry especially.
Yes.
And if he's been involved in porn at all, she's going to internalize that and experience any overtures he makes as rejection as well. And a lot of couples, it may not be right when they get married that this happens. It might be right when a baby comes. For us, it's the opposite. But I know a lot of couples where the honeymoon period's great, but then as the baby comes, they get into this cycle.
And why do you think that happens when the baby comes?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons. One of them is just plain hormonal. I mean, for a woman, after the baby's born, her desire for sex goes way down because you're nursing, your body hasn't kicked back in yet, plus you're darn exhausted. Not getting any sleep, and you are totally consumed with this little tiny bundle that is attached to you constantly. And at the same time, he, even if he loves that baby dearly, starts to wonder if you're still a family unit or if it's just the mom and the baby. And so he needs to feel like he still means something. So he might be pushing more for sex at the same time as she's like, I can't do what I already have to do. Don't add something else to my to-do list. And so then they get into the cycle.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up because my youngest is 5 months old, or just turned 6 months old. So, yeah, I hear that. That's actually really, really true. And I would even add to that list, the wife is still not even in her own, feeling good in her own skin yet, I don't think.
Yeah, body image. Yeah, body image is huge if you don't mind the pun, but yeah.
Okay, wait, what is, body, it took me a while to get that pun, actually. Thank you. That's really funny. Yes, exactly. No, that's really good. So you guys had kids, and that helped you actually focus on something else. If someone's in that rut, and a marriage is in that rut that you're talking about where both of you are feeling rejected back and forth, I mean, what are some tips you can give them?
Well, the first one I would say is stop pointing your finger at your spouse. I think, and this is true especially for women, we start feeling rejected, we start feeling unloved, we start feeling heartbroken. And, there's all these verses in Scripture about how God is close to the brokenhearted and how God cares about the brokenhearted. And so we start to feel like God is on our side. God looks down at us and he feels so sorry for his poor broken daughter. And so we pour this heartbreak out to God. We pour this heartbreak out to all of our friends. And it reinforces this idea that our husband doesn't love us. Yeah. And yet, I don't think that is really the way that God looks at your marriage. My two daughters, as I said before, are older now. They're 20 and 18. But I remember the time between the ages of 8 and 12 were horrible. Because the older one had gone through puberty, the younger one hadn't yet. And so they were constantly clashing. And I know how I felt as a mother when my two daughters were clashing. It hurt me because I love both of them. And there they are, and they're clashing. So I really don't think that God is up there in heaven, looking at you as you're brokenhearted and wanting to stroke your hair and say, that's okay, I know he's a really mean person. I think God is looking at you and saying, I love you, but I love your husband too, and I just want you to love each other. Wow. And instead we tend to wallow and we tend to retreat into ourselves, and we don't see that there are actually things that we can do to make our marriage better. Instead we say things to ourselves like, I would be happy if only he would give me some time to myself. I would be happy if only he would figure out what I need to feel loved. I would be happy if only he would learn to put the toilet paper roll on, or whatever. And the more you say those sorts of things to yourself, I will be happy if only he, the more you put your happiness in his hands. It's no longer in your own. And therefore, you're helpless. You're just waiting for him to change. And that is never going to work, especially because there are things that we can do to make our relationships better.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love that you said, if we kept on saying, I will be happy when ... whatever that is, then the husband, the man, or if the husband, the wife, whatever, they have control over your emotions. Exactly. And that doesn't make sense. Yeah. That's not, no, I love that. Okay. So what about the wife that is feeling totally affection starved and she's just saying, I will be happy when. Now, what can she do then in terms of her own being, making herself feel good?
Well, there's several different things. I mean, first of all, we do need to make sure that we're feeding ourselves, apart from the marriage, right? We need to make sure that we have a good emotional outlet with some friends. We need to make sure that we're still learning something, that we have some intellectual outlets, even in the baby years, like keep reading a book or watching a TED Talk while you're nursing, or something to make you feel like you are more than just a mother, because you are. And there's things that you can learn even in these times. And I think that when we keep learning, when we keep engaged with friends, when we keep praying, when we keep having that relationship with God, we become more satisfied. We become richer in ourselves. And that, you need to be a rich person, a complete person yourself too. But in terms of marriage, and I think that's the first step, is getting yourself in a strong place. And that includes, by the way, sleeping well and eating well. It makes such a difference. I've gone through some real health issues in the last year. Nothing life-threatening, not at all. Just a lot of pain issues I had to deal with. And it's amazing how just changing your diet in little ways can dramatically change your life, And I never used to believe that before. I heard people say it, and I always thought, that they're just environmental crazies or something,
Sure. Yeah.
But, it actually is true when we stop eating so much junk. So, I mean, that can really help.
I love that.
But then I think it's also really important to say marriage is you're always in a certain balance, and that balance might be unhealthy. Like, when you're on a teeter-totter at a playground and the kids are going up and down. Because and the way to go up is you push off with your feet, and then you the other person goes down, and you go back and forth like that. And sometimes you can be in the balance on the teeter-totter where one person's taking a lot more of the weight. And what happens if you're on the bottom and you suddenly get off, right? Yeah. That the person that's on the top now is just going to go flying. And there's different ways that you can change that balance. And, you need to look at your marriage and you need to say, okay, we're in an unhealthy balance right now. And I can either wait for them to step off and have me go flying, or I can see how I can just make small adjustments so that we find a new status quo that is just healthier. And if you're the kind of person, here's something very, very minor that I mentioned on my Facebook page the other day, and it makes such a huge difference. Ask for help. Like, just ask for help. If you are overwhelmed with everything that you are doing in the house and he never helps, sometimes he just needs to be asked really directly. I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Date Night, with Steve Carell and Tina Fey. I love that movie. But
I haven't yet.
Oh, it's a great movie. I mean, there's some weird things in it, okay? But the message about marriage in it, I think everybody will relate to. And, how you can get into this rut, but how love is still love, and we just need to find that again. And it's really great. But there's one scene where they're talking, and she's saying, I never daydream about leaving you. I never daydream about another man. I never daydream about that. The only thing I really daydream about is one day leaving the home, checking myself into a hotel, and drinking a Diet Sprite on my own with no one touching me.
That's so funny.
That is her daydream. And she says, all day I do everything for everybody. I have to get the kids in their pajamas. Why is it that every day it's big news that these kids have to get in their pajamas, and she has to do all of these things, and she's just so tired. And he says, well, your life would be so much easier if you would just let me help. But every time I try, you send me away and you never ask. And I thought, that's really true. A lot of us are upset that our husbands don't help, but we never actually ask. And so I put that up on my Facebook page, and some people left some really interesting comments about how for 5 years they had been angry about their husband and the dishwasher, how he never put anything in the dishwasher, and they would fume. And then one day they said, honey, can you put your coffee cup in the dishwasher? And he just opened the dishwasher and did it. And from now on, he always puts his coffee cup in the dishwasher. It had just never occurred to him before.
So funny. Yeah, no, that's so funny. And also, I think sometimes we ask with that resentment already built up. And so then it becomes a big issue when it really could have started with this open-ended, honey, would you help me with this? I love that. Mm-hmm.
And I find, too, men, if you say, can you help me with this, that's often not as helpful as, instead of I'm making dinner, can you help me make dinner? How about, can you peel and chop the carrots?
Oh, good one. Yes.
Or, like give them something specific, because we have, this is the thing about being a multitasker, is we have so many things in our head at all times, and we know everything that needs to be done, and we have this huge list, and so we see the whole picture. Men don't work that way, and so to them, they don't know what you want them to do. So if we can just break it down, that's a much more helpful method of communication.
Yeah, and I love that, and I appreciate that you also talk about how men think versus how women think. A lot of times it is very different, and so you have to, sometimes be very, very specific. And the other thing, I think, I wonder if you agree with me, Sheila, but I think a lot of times we micromanage in a way that's just unhelpful. And so maybe we've asked for help, or our husband was originally helping us with whatever, getting the kids ready or whatever, but then he does it a totally different way than you would, and then you kind of pick apart his delivery of helping you, and then it kind of, okay, never mind, you won't help you next time.
Yeah, I wrote a book called To Love, Honor, and Vacuum. It was actually my first book, and I shared the story in that about a dad who one day, together with another dad friend of his, they decided on the spur of the moment they were going to take the kids to the beach. Give the wives a day home with just the women. And this sounded like a good idea, but they took off to the beach, and they had forgotten towels, they had forgotten sunscreen, they didn't pack a lunch. Like, to a woman, to go to the beach is a huge undertaking, right? We have to plan this the day before because we need all of this stuff. And the guys just went. And, it ended up being a really fun day. Like when they realized they didn't have sunscreen, they just had the kids go in the water and then roll around in the sand so that they had sand covering their bodies.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh my gosh.
And then they just dried off in the sun later on. And, and it was just remembered as this really fun day with Dad, where everything was not normal, but everyone made do. And so the kids had a great time. And the moms learned that sometimes you just have to take a step back, and he really will be able to do it. And he's going to do it in his own way. And so, we do need to give our husbands the leeway to do some of that stuff.
Yes, that's so true. Yeah. And what is the premise of To Love, Honor, and Vacuum? Because I know you've got a vibrant blog and this book. And could you just share what someone picking up your book would be able to learn from it?
Well, the subtitle is If You Feel More Like a Maid Than a Wife and a Mother. And I think that that's what happens with so many women. We get married thinking we're signing up for this relationship. And then 5 years later, we feel like our life is just one endless to-do list. And what do you do then? How do you find the love again? How do you make sure that people are actually respecting you when you feel like everyone takes you for granted? And it's all about things that we can do to change our marriage and to change the dynamic so that our husbands, do cherish us and do treat us well, because, the things that we tolerate tend to continue. And I think a lot of women are tolerating things that they shouldn't. And then a lot of women are becoming such control freaks that our husbands tend to retreat. And that's not healthy either. So there's these two problems. One is that we may tolerate things that we really shouldn't. And the other is that we may start acting in ways that we really shouldn't. And so how can we find that proper balance where we're more of a team?
Yeah, and I know you use scripture kind of throughout your website. Is that also in the book, like a godly approach to that as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the verses that really sums up, I think, everything that I write is Hebrews 12. I guess it's two verses, Hebrews 12, 1 and 2, where the writer of the Hebrews, after Hebrews 11, where they did this whole great heroes of the faith, and they explain all these great heroes of the faith, they start off chapter 12 by saying, therefore, since we're surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, all these people who have before, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, and let us why am I blanking on this now?
That's okay. I just looked it up. Throw off everything that hinders.
Yes, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin which so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us. And the one thing that really hit me about those verses when I first read them, probably when I was a teenager, was the things that we're supposed to throw off. We're supposed to throw off everything that hinders and the sin, which means that there could be things that are hindering us that aren't necessarily sin.
And I like that.
I think that often we feel like if there's a block in our marriage or if there's a block in our relationship with God, it must be because there's some huge sin issue. And that certainly may be the case. And we certainly need to examine our lives to see if that's the case. But often it's not a sin issue which is keeping us from God's best. Often it's just behavior patterns or time wasters or things that are not necessarily bad, but they're holding us back. They're weighing us down. And what are those things? And so that's what I really challenge people to look at, is because I think we fill our lives with a lot of things that are not helpful.
Yeah.
A lot of behavior patterns, even for women, especially like our attitude towards sex.
Yeah.
All of these.
And what do you mean by that? When you...
I think that we now I'm generalizing here, okay?
Of course.
Let me put a disclaimer out there. When I did the research for my book, The Good Girl's Guide to Great Sex, in about 24% of marriages, the woman is the one with the higher sex drive. So it is not always the guy with the higher libido, okay? So please, if you're one of the women who has the higher sex drive, just give me a bit of grace for what I'm about to say, okay? We can come back to that situation in a minute, too, because there's some unique problems with that. But I think a lot of women really see sex as something which, is optional. Like it might be the icing on the cake, but that really is all that it is. Like it's just something that's extra. Whereas sex is really more the oil in the engine, the thing that keeps the relationship going. And God created it to be something which is so wonderful. It's intimate on three levels. It's emotionally intimate, it's spiritually intimate, it's physically intimate, and a lot of people haven't necessarily experienced all of that, and so we tend to make sex seem like it's something which is almost shallow, and it shouldn't be. And when we don't put enough emphasis on it, I think we rob ourselves of a very rich life. We don't just rob our husbands.
Yeah. That's good. No, I love that. It's interesting. I love that you talk about sex that way. Yeah, I want to ask you just a follow-up about the higher libido wives. I've definitely had encounters with plenty of higher libido wives. They'll talk about it. But the thing that gets me, I just don't understand, and maybe you can clarify this for me, is I don't get how our society doesn't reflect it. Does that make sense? We don't have, sex slavery is not happening to serve the female drive. Nothing is happening to that. Pornography is generally not serving the female drive. I mean, it seems like if it were more comparable to each side, the sex drive, it seems like that would show up in the statistics elsewhere. I mean, what do you kind of think about that?
Well, I think that the media's portrayal of sex tends to be more male focused. Yeah. But I think that that's largely also a cultural shift. Because what happened was, somewhere near the beginning of the century, when Christianity stopped being as much of a driving force, we really started seeing sex as something which is outside of marriage. And if you take sex outside of a committed marriage relationship, then all you really have is the physical. You don't have the emotional intimacy. You don't have the spiritual intimacy, because those things, to have those things, you need trust, you need commitment, you need vulnerability, and none of those things are present if you don't have a real commitment. And so what we've done is we've taken sex outside the marriage relationship. We've made it only about the physical, and so we start to portray sex in that way. I mean, sex. What's super sexy? It's the body, and this is why we see such pressure on women to look a certain way. There's always been pressure on women to be beautiful, always. But it's become almost sinister, I think, in the last 30 years, the pressure that women face. And it's because in order to attract someone, you have to be a certain type of sexy. That's only true if sex is only about the body. And so, and then what happens if you have sex and you feel like something's missing? Like it doesn't feel quite as good as it's supposed to. Well, then we figure what we need to do is we need to stretch the boundaries more and more. We need to try more and more weird things, exciting things, see if we can get that high. And so that's where you see all these weird sexual practices that nobody ever did, or, nobody even talked about when that now our 12-year-olds know what they are. And so boundaries are really getting stretched. And yet what people don't realize is that the reason that sex seems to be missing something is because what it's missing is that idea of spiritual intimacy, when you feel like you're one, where you feel like you're really connecting. You can't do that when you're not married. And so I think what's happened is that the media's portrayal of sex has become something which is completely physical. And that may seem more like a male portrayal of sex, but I think that men have as great a desire for intimacy too. So it's not that guys are shallow or anything like that. Yeah. It's just that our whole portrayal has really made sex shallow. And that's what we're missing.
I love that. I like that so much. And so to kind of circle that into the higher libido wives kind of journey, to talk about the reason that maybe statistics doesn't, like the things that I shared about, the pornography or prostitution, those kinds of things, a female, her nature would not kind of go after things like that because she's looking for the intimacy that's in marriage, not the physical. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, I would. I mean, our sex drives are certainly very different. And, there's several reasons why a guy could have a lower sex drive. And also it's really common. Right. It's really common in marriages for it to ebb and flow. For there to be a period she has a higher sex drive, and then for there to be a period where he has the higher one. So it's not like this is always static. But in general, the things that can kill libido, they're first of all health issues, antidepressants, certain medications, diabetes. If you're really overweight, for guys, especially who are overweight, it means they're going to produce more estrogen. Estrogen in a guy is like the opposite of testosterone. It's going to kill their sex drive. So any of those things can do it. Stress can really kill your libido. Relationship issues. If he's had performance problems, so if he's had erectile dysfunction in the past, he might get scared of trying again, and so that can kill it. But the interesting thing is that all of those reasons have been present forever. Maybe not the antidepressant stuff, but health issues, stress from work issues, all of those have been present forever. But what we've seen in the last 10 years is a huge spike in the number of men who have no sex drive. And the only real change in the last 10 to 15 years is the prevalence of pornography. Wow. And pornography is really the number one libido killer for men. And that's counterintuitive, because most people think, well, if he's watching porn all the time, he's going to be really excited. But that's actually not the case at all. Because what happens is if he watches porn, he's rewiring his brain so that what becomes exciting is an image rather than a person. And so, and so now it actually becomes almost impossible, depending on how much he uses porn, to get aroused by his wife.
Yes.
And, there was a really interesting, huge study done out of Italy about 3 years ago now that found that most sufferers of erectile dysfunction are now under the age of 40.
Ugh.
It's not Bob Dole with the little blue pill, like, that we used to see on commercials. It's really young guys, and those little blue pills will do nothing for them because it's not a physiological problem. It's not a physical problem. The problem is in the brain because you've literally rewired the brain about what is arousing. And so, porn is toxic for so many reasons, But that's one huge thing that's going on. And so we're raising this generation of teenagers who are getting their sex education from pornography. So, as soon as they start to have sexual feelings, they see porn on the computer, and that solidifies that relationship between pornography and arousal. And now normal arousal isn't even possible. So so the boys who are growing up today, they're going to have a big challenge. And I think as parents, we need to be protecting them.
Yeah, absolutely. We had an interview just recently by Luke Gilkerson from Covenant Eyes.
Yeah.
So we need to be protecting them by absolutely guarding, putting on filters. So I think that's very, very important. It's interesting. I've been swimming in this stuff for a while. I don't know if this ever happens to you, Sheila, but sometimes it's just so overwhelming, the brokenness of our world. And God kind of gave me a scripture recently that I felt was really helpful. It says, Romans 12:21, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And that has just been really helpful recently to me because the brokenness of our world is so stark that I just love someone like Sheila's message. You can see that it's a hopeful message. So she's saying this is the sadness of what's happening today, but we need to be overcoming evil with good. We need to be getting married and having appropriate and good intimacy in it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And no matter what kind of brokenness people have, marriage, I think, can be one of the most healing tools that God can use. I know that my marriage has been an incredibly healing tool in my life. Healing some of those rejection issues that I had as a child. And it's okay to be broken. It really is. And I think that when God is in our brokenness, amazing things can happen. And so, if you're a woman and you're listening to this and your husband's struggling with pornography, there's two possibilities. One is that he won't acknowledge it and he doesn't think it's wrong. And if that's the problem, if that's the case, you really need an intervention. You need to get someone to come and talk to him with you. But, in a lot of Christian relationships, what I've seen is that he really wants to stop. He's just having a really hard time. It isn't something he's happy about. He's really deeply ashamed about it. He just doesn't know how to stop. And if that's the case, I would really encourage you, fight the porn. Do not fight your husband. Fight with your husband, not against your husband, because he just needs your support. And I know that you're hurt. I know that you women listening are hurt if your husband's doing that and you feel rejected. But if he really is trying to stop, then be his biggest cheerleader. Don't make it harder on him. And talk to some friends about it to get out your own feelings. But I think you can be his biggest ally in this fight.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Sheila, because you're absolutely right. I struggled with bulimia when I met my husband, and it was the love and support that he gave me was so vital in me getting free of that addiction. And that's something I kind of think about with the pornography, is that wives have an opportunity to love their husband through this to get totally free. And the other, I guess, side of this that I think is a helpful piece, and I wonder, what your thoughts are on this, Sheila, is that, I know that my husband is someone who has struggled with pornography in the past, and so it's possible it could come up again. And I just have to have a real honest understanding of that, because if we kind of put our husbands on this pedestal that they're never going to struggle with this, it puts the extra pressure on them, and then also it makes it a lot harder for them to share with you if and when it does occur.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there's such a difference between a guy who uses porn every day and a guy who relapses maybe once a week and binges for a weekend. I'm not saying the weekend binge is fine. It's not. But
yeah.
think about it for you if you're trying to lose weight. How many of us have tried to lose weight and we've been really good on a diet for 29 days, and then on day 30, we head to Krispy Kreme and we get,
Right.
I mean, it's hard. It's really hard when you're trying to defeat something. And for guys too, pornography can be really paired with stress relief. A lot of guys turn to it when they are stressed. And so you could be fine for 5 years, and then you'll go through a period of financial stress or job loss, or even like a child's illness. And that's when it will come up again, and, it's just, let's just show each other some grace. Like I said, it's entirely different if your husband won't admit it's wrong and continues to use it, and that's a different situation. But if he really is trying to address it, then let's address it with him and be his cheerleader.
Yeah, that's really good. Wow, such great insights. I am excited to share with you actually the next half of this on Thursday. So she gives so much more insight. You won't want to miss it. Come back on Thursday and you're going to hear really one in particular is a very specific technique that women will need to start implementing in their lovemaking for the most possible pleasure. So that is coming up. I know you've got to wait. I'm sorry, but let's come back and join me with Sheila on Thursday, and we'll talk then. God bless you. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks for joining. If you've been inspired by this show, would you help spread the word? If you take a moment to review and subscribe, others can find us more easily. Find out how at delightyourmarriage.com/iTunes. Until next time, live with love, wisdom, and passion.